So you know by now that you're dealing with a narcissist, you're in this relationship with a narcissist, and you're thinking, how the heck do I get out of this relationship? How do I end it? How do I move forward? So I hear from people all day long, thousands of you from all over the world who have asked me, how do I get out of these relationships? What do I do next? I'm scared. You know, this person has set up this situation where they're in control, and they have you feeling and believing and in a situation where you think, if I ever try to leave this person, it's going to be pure hell. Let me tell you, it is. I can't sugarcoat that. And if I sat here and told you it's not going to be hell to get out of it, then I would be lying to you, and that's not what I do here. So, but what I can tell you is that I've helped many, many people get through this and get to the other side, and it is better, and you can move on, and it is a better life on the other side, despite what they may say. They may even say to you, you know, you'll be nothing without them. That's not true. So that's what I'm doing here on this channel and with the work that I do, and I promise you it will get better on the other side of this crazy thing. So when you're dealing with a narcissist, remember that you're dealing with a personality type that has no inner sense of value. They have to derive all of their value from the external in the form of what we call narcissistic supply. And if you want to know more about narcissistic supply, check out my Narcissism 101 video called Narcissistic Supply so that you can understand more of what it is. But basically, it's anything that feeds a narcissist's ego. And if they see that supply source walking out the door, then they're going to go crazy. It's sort of like a 2-year-old who's having a tantrum. If the 2-year-old wants to get something from the parents, they may fall to the floor, they may cry, they may scream, they may rage, they may throw things, they may do all these things. And what the 2-year-old is doing is basically testing the parents and conditioning them to see, you know, if I scream and if I do these things, are you going to give me what I want? And if the parents give into that child, then they know for next time, all I have to do is scream louder, scream longer, scream harder, throw things, completely embarrass them, make their lives miserable, and they'll just give in. So that's what you're going to start seeing with this narcissist. You're going to see where you actually trigger that narcissistic rage is going to come out, and things will probably get worse before they get better. But narcissists are always the worst right before they're ready to give up. So never forget that. Okay, so when you go to end this relationship, you have to be extremely careful, extremely purposeful, and deliberate, and have a plan of action when you go to end the relationship that will actually make sure that you do the things that you need to do to get where you need to go. Number one, don't give them one more chance. Not verbally, not internally. They've had their chance. You've given them the options over and over and over again on how to correct their behavior. They can't, they won't, and don't give them one more chance. Just decide and move on. Number two, when you decide to leave them, don't tell them, don't share it with them, just move on. You're going to create your plan for getting out, and you're not going to share any of it with them. Don't say, I'm leaving you, I'm getting ready to leave you, nothing like that. Just create the plan and then execute on it. They will do everything they can to make this a living hell for you, and they may even try to thwart your efforts to leave. So they may try to foil your plans, they may try to love bomb you, guilt you, play the victim, all of these different things. And if it's already been a hard decision for you to come to, then you could get sucked back into that. So don't tell them about your plan. The other thing that they might try to do is intimidate you, devalue you, cause fear inside of you. If you leave, this is what's going to happen. Or they may just decide that they're going to discard you first, beat you to it, make it worse for you. something like that. So do not tell them that you are leaving. Number 3 is make a copy of all of the important documents that you're going to need, financial or otherwise. It's really important if you can to make a copy or take a picture of these documents, because if you take the documents and they find out that you took them, then that'll be something that they can use against you. Oh, she took everything out of the home, and they'll turn it into something much bigger and much worse. They stole money, blah, blah, blah. So just make sure that you have copies or take pictures of the documents that you're going to need, financials such as tax returns and bank statements, credit card statements, deeds, any prenuptial agreements, things of that nature. Number 4, I talk about this in my other videos. Before you leave a narcissist, watch this is one of them. But one of the things you're going to want to do is have a stash of cash. You're going to want to have at least 3 months worth, so that your lawyer will have an opportunity to set a hearing and get you temporary support if you are the non-moneyed spouse. And you're also going to want to have enough to hire a lawyer. Number 4 is, if you are in an abusive situation, report what has happened to you. Report it to your therapist, report it to your clergyman, report it to the police, whoever you need to, especially if it's been physical abuse or sexual abuse or anything like that. You can always go to a domestic violence shelter as well, but don't be silent about it. There are resources out there for you, and we will actually drop a link and the phone number to the domestic violence hotline, the National Domestic Violence Hotline, so that you can call that if you feel that your life is in danger. Number 5 is change your passwords and log out of all of your devices before you leave anywhere. And make sure that you've logged out of all of the clouds as well. I've had clients who've had that situation where they didn't realize that the iPad that was left at home was connected to the cloud, and now the spouse was reading all of their emails and seeing all of their text messages and things like that. So change your passwords on all of your devices, and including passwords to social media accounts and things like that. And also, block them, get them off of your social media. And they're flying monkeys as well. Think about their minions as well. So making sure that you also have a secure email. That is how you and your attorney are going to be communicating with each other. So you need to have a secure email to be able to do that. Number 7 is check your devices for trackers, or your vehicles for trackers. Make sure that nothing has been put onto your car, especially if you're dealing with a malignant narcissist. If you want to know more about malignant narcissists, they are the most dangerous form of narcissist. Check out my video on a malignant narcissist, but they do have a tendency to track the people that they're dealing with. They stalk them. They have a proclivity for stalking. So make sure to check your vehicle for any tracking devices. Number 8 is don't give in to their flattery or their love bombing. They may start to do the things that they did to get you into their web of control in the first place, like love bombing you. And if you want to know more about love bombing, check out my video on love bombing. But they may start doing that. Don't listen to it. Close your ears. It's a trick. It's a way to kind of suck you back in. Sometimes it's called hoovering. And it's really just a manipulation method to get you back into their web of control. Number 9 is reconnect with family and friends. You are going to need a support system as you go through this. So reconnect with the people that mean the most to you, who love you, who will believe you, who will support you. And also, seek out therapists, seek out somebody that you can talk to about this, who's a neutral third party, maybe even a clergyman or somebody at your church or synagogue or something like that, so that you will have a support system in place as you go through this. Number 10, similarly, The opposite side of this is disconnect from anybody who's toxic, anybody who's not going to be helpful, anybody who's not going to be on your side, who's going to judge you or make you feel worse or make you feel like a failure. You don't need that in your life. Number 11 is stay away upon leaving. Once you have left, stay away. Don't fall prey to going back or even just to have a conversation or anything like that. Just, stay firm in your decision and stay strong in your decision once you've made that decision. Next is learn about narcissism. Use the resources that are out there, including this channel, including the other channels that are out there on YouTube, which have amazing resources. Dr. Ramani has great resources, and she's a psychologist. There are several others out there like her, Melanie Tanya Evans, Tracy Malone, who of Narcissist Abuse Support. There are lots of us out there that are providing resources around narcissism. Kim Saeed is another one. And I've actually partnered with all of these people in various times, and we've done videos together. And the reason why we do these videos together is because we each bring different perspective, more information. And at this time, you really want to learn about what it is that you need to do. Here on my channel, I teach you about narcissists because it's really important for you to understand the pathology of narcissism and the psychology of narcissism just enough to know what you need to do to negotiate with them and get out of this relationship with them in a way that leaves you as unscathed as possible and helps you come to a fair resolution. And if you are so ready to delete that toxicity and move forward with your life, give me an I'm ready in the comments. The next thing that you can do is go easy on yourself. Go slowly. Forgive yourself. You did what you did and you made the decisions that you made in the moment. And remember that these people are master manipulators. They've been manipulating their whole entire lives. Don't beat yourself up over the fact that you were in that relationship. It happened. You learned from it, you're moving on now, and that's the most important thing, so forgive yourself. I also do have a video on self-care to cope with a narcissist, and you might want to check that one out as well. But the most important thing is that take care of yourself, go easy on yourself, go slowly, it's okay. And don't even beat yourself up over if you end up doing some of these things I'm saying not to do. If you end up talking to the person, it's okay. Just forgive yourself. Understand that you're going to be going through the stages of grief. This is the end of a relationship. This is the end of a dream. It's the end of what you thought was happening. It's the end of what you thought your future was going to be. So you will be going through those 5 stages of grief, and you will eventually heal. You will eventually get to the other side, and it will be better.
I know for me, it just, like all of a sudden, because it was like little things, because I was dealing with a covert narcissist. Well, I had 2 different ones in my life, but the one that you knew about, it was like this death by 1,000 cuts. There were like a whole bunch of little things that weren't right. Yeah. But, with covert narcissists, they're so subtle and they're really, really good at being passive aggressive and just manipulative enough to get under your skin, but they live on this balance of this teetering of just enough to annoy you and traumatize you, but not enough for the world to see what they're doing to you. Yeah. So the rest of the world sees them as good and kind and great and so nice and wonderful people, and only you see that other side of them. And so it's that whole gaslighting thing of making you think like you're the one that's crazy because look, the rest of the world thinks I'm amazing. Yes. And so it's really, really tough. And I know for me, one of the things, because I'm a ruminator and I was like always obsessing over what is this person doing? What are they going to do next? And, and so I would say one of the things that people can do to stop, and I say this in other videos as well, is like, don't obsess. don't stop. I had this epiphany of,
Mm.
if I'm like obsessing about what this other person is going to do to me next, or is stabbing me behind the back, or whatever they're doing,
Yes.
I'm not creating. I'm not in positive mode. I'm not experiencing joy in my life at that moment.
Yes. Yes.
So can you tell us more about that?
Absolutely. Okay. So obsessional thoughts, what that really is control. Okay. Let me think about this over and over and over again so I can in some way control whether this person is going to hurt me. How is he or she behaving, right? What's going to happen, right? So that's all about trying to control your future, which is an illusion. It's impossible. Okay. Now, control issues put your physical brain into fight, flight, freeze, right? Remember, going back to that brain, that physical brain that's geared towards survival, okay? When we're trying to control something that we have no control over, which is somebody else's behavior, we have no control over how somebody else behaves, okay? But we're trying to find that control over something that we have no control over. So exactly what you're saying, when we're in
So say that again. Fight,
yeah,
flight,
yeah,
freeze.
fight, flight, freeze. It is the
Okay.
primitive part of our brain, okay? It is the primitive part of our brain that is only rooted in survival. That's your survival mechanism, okay? Is trying to control your future so that you don't have pain, which sets you up to always feel this overwhelming sense of fear because we can't control the future.
And we can't
So
control the other person.
you can't control the other person, and you can't control anything that isn't right here, right now. You can control your thoughts, your emotions, and your behavior. And so when you are in fight, flight, freeze brain, you don't have access to the higher level of thinking in other parts of your brain. And it is those parts of your brain that are associated with creativity, innovation, groundedness, right? You don't have any access to that. So you get into, when you talk about obsession, what you're talking about is this repetitive thought loop where you've got a thought that leads to a feeling, that leads to a behavior, that leads to another thought, right? And before you know it, you're in this vicious cycle of a thought that keeps looping.
Yeah. And it just is like the loop of insanity. It's basically the definition of insanity, because there's never going to be any good outcome from that.
No.
And when you were saying something about, you were expecting this narcissist or this toxic person to, make you feel better or feel, love or whatever. The flip side of that is people who will say to me, he makes me feel like crap. He makes, or she makes me feel blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And so giving them that power of saying, I'm going to allow you to dictate how I feel. And I'm giving you that permission to dictate how I feel. And you're giving this person who feels worthless about their own selves.
That's right.
To dictate how you're going to feel. And you're never going to have any satisfaction from that.
That's right.
So I want to also talk about, a lot of people who are dealing with these people, they're constantly going, why are they doing this? Mm-hmm. A reasonable person wouldn't act this way. Right. So talk about, how to stop trying to apply reason to unreasonable.
That's right. So where you lose your reasoning, right? If you are in a toxic relationship, where you lose your reasoning is by buying into the thought, okay, which is really fundamentally a belief, right? A belief is a thought we think over and over and over again, okay? So the belief is, you make me feel worthless, no good, right? You make me feel that way. Now, here's the thing. Okay, if you're a healthy person, the most fundamental thing that you can do as far as shifting into a different mind is recognizing that there isn't a human being alive that can make you feel worthless, unlovable, unimportant, no good. Okay, they behave how they behave. It is your thoughts about how they behave that makes you feel these emotions. And most people don't understand that, right? Most people do really believe that it is this person that makes me feel that way, or it is this circumstance that makes me feel that way.
So it's a faulty logic and cause and effect.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It is our thoughts.
Right.
It starts with our thoughts. Our thoughts determine our emotions, determine our behavior. So when we can recognize, right, that we can control our thoughts, emotions, and behaviors, we can let go and let people, they're going to behave how they behave. This narcissist is going to behave how she or he behaves. There is nothing that has nothing to do with you.
No.
And the only thing that we can do, right, when we're in a better mindset,
and even if they say it's your fault, you caused this, blah, 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 it's still not. I mean, they're going to say that, right?
They're going to say that. That's listen, so the narcissist's automatic thought is always it's your problem. That's what a narcissist does. There's no ability to take ownership, right?
Right.
And that's why they have a string of, right, like dysfunctional relationships. So the narcissist will always blame you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know for me, one of the things that was really important I had to recognize, oh my God, this person is sick. These people that I'm dealing with are narcissists. That's what they are. They're not going to get better. It's really sad. It's too bad. You want things to be different because, I'm a fixer. I have always been able to fix things, make things happen, and so I thought that I could fix it, make it better, have it be at least cordial, have it be at least, but you just can't do that when you're dealing with a person who is sick.
Yeah.
And so acknowledging your own behavior, acknowledging what you did to allow this to happen is I think really important, because then that actually allows you to take control over and realize, okay, I have control for the next time, and forgive yourself and go, okay, this happened.
Yes.
And I can learn from this. And now I know these things, but allowing, I allowed it to happen.
Yes.
I love Maya Angelou's, where she says, when people show you who they are, believe them the first time. And I didn't do that. And so I had to take responsibility for that and then forgive myself and then move on.
Yes.
So we have like a couple minutes, and I really want to get some of your like really awesome tidbits in there. So give us your last thoughts on how people can really, move on and get over this.
Absolutely. Well, okay. So also to quote Maya Angelou, because she's so brilliant.
I know, I love.
She's amazing, right?
Yeah.
So she says that we are blind until we see, and that when we know better, we do better. Okay.
Oh, yes. That's such a good one.
Right. So here's the way it is for all human beings on the planet. All human beings, our lives, right, are a journey. Okay. And so with every step that every chapter of our lives, we're blind until we see. And so rather than looking back and saying, I should have done this and I shouldn't have done that, the way that you can see this is this relationship, as toxic as it was, okay, it's all in service of your growth. It's all in service of your journey, right? Remember I said before, it's a mirror, so that really almost you needed to be in this relationship and have this painful experience so that you can wake up. Because human beings, unfortunately, for every one of us, we only grow when we're in pain.
Yeah,
and sometimes we got to get hit in the face with a 2x4 before we wake up.
Yeah,
Toxic relationships do. They wake us up.
Yep.
Yep.
What is it, Rumi, that says something like where the wound is, that's where the light enters, or something like
Yes,
that.
yes,
And
yes.
it's so good. And that's
Yep.
so true. And, honestly, I wrote books on negotiation. I presented a Camp Empowerment on negotiation.
Yep.
And, my whole thing about negotiating with a narcissist has been born from having to deal with real narcissists in my real life. And so, yeah, I mean, I've been able to help, now thousands and thousands of people
Right.
because of the pain that I suffered, and helping people get past that.
Exactly. That's why I developed Dethroning Your Inner Critic, because of my 30-year journey of needing to unhook from my own automatic mind and rewire a new mind, right? It's like,
Yeah,
that's what happens. We learn from our pain and we
absolutely.
grow. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. A lot of the people in my community are dealing with toxic relationships, and trying to get over them.
Yes.
And I would love for you to sort of weigh in and help us with how to move on, how to get past that.
Absolutely.
And so what's, one of the things that you would suggest
Mhm.
for people to do?
Yeah. So here's the thing about, relationships in general, right? We get almost attached to how other people treat us, right? We want to be loved, we want to be respected, we want to, be in a relationship with somebody, whether it's a friend or whether it's a romantic relationship, right? We want to feel good in that relationship. And so what happens for many people is that they're looking for that other person to, in some way, make them feel important, valued, loved, right? Now, here's the problem. When you're dealing with a narcissist, you're dealing with a fundamentally broken human, and you are attached to how they're treating you, right? You're demanding, you need to treat me with the love and the respect that I deserve, okay? Except the issue is that other human, because of their own inner issues that they have way before they met you, they're not capable. And what happens in toxic relationships is that this is all very unconscious, but people personalize that. So their emotions get so triggered by this person and their behavior. And then they go to try to fix or control or change the narcissist. If you would just behave in this way so that I can feel loved and I can feel valued. And that's where people can feel so emotionally damaged, because they're expecting this other person to make them feel in a way that that other person is just not capable of making them feel.
I totally agree. And that's super incredible insight. I was wondering if you could also sort of expound on the fact that, narcissists have this pattern that they have with in relationships, which is
Yeah.
love bomb, devalue, discard. And there's they kind of go back and forth between these various. I tell people all the time, it's not linear. It's not love bomb, stop, devalue, stop, discard, stop. They'll be love bombing, then devalue, love bomb, devalue. And can you talk about, from a psychological perspective, what's happening with somebody's brain when that's happening?
Yeah. So the narcissistic personality is really created by worthlessness, but the narcissist doesn't know that. Okay, so what happens in a person's life when they are very young, okay, something happens where they feel a fundamental sense of worthlessness. They don't even have to remember what it was, but this worthlessness gets created, and then this person will sort of try to overcompensate for that worthlessness by trying to control a lot of areas of his or her life. Okay, so that's what's going on psychologically, okay? Is that the narcissist is very focused externally on control and on power. And so there's pretty much no willingness or availability to take ownership for themselves about how they are thinking in a way that's creating right the toxic parts of the relationships. In other words, they're going to blame everything and everyone but themselves for the reason why the relationship looks the way that it does. And that's just their pattern, right? And they're not capable of inwardly taking responsibility and ownership for that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's because, and you can tell me from the psychological perspective, but I think it's because if they somehow, it's a survival protection for them.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, if they take responsibility, then somehow they're exposed as being worthless.
That's right. So, you know, what's so interesting is that if you look at our physical brains, okay, and the hardwiring of our brains, going back millions of years ago, right, our brains were developed to keep us safe, okay, right? And millions of years ago, that meant like you weren't going to be eaten for dinner, okay? But nowadays, what that means is you're hardwired to try to protect the inward thing that causes you the most pain. So if you think about the narcissist and their fundamental sense of worthlessness, their lives are wrapped around making sure that that feeling of worthlessness will never be touched by anyone or anything. So that's the survival mechanism, is let me control you so that you never have access to touch on that pain.
Yeah,
right?
that's
Yeah.
good stuff. Good
Yep.
stuff.
Yep.
So now, these people have gotten into a relationship with these people, and I personally have had to deal with them. I mean, I would say not husbands, because my my poor husband, I don't want people to think it's him, but other people in my life who were close enough to me to wreak havoc.
Yes.
And actually, you were kind enough to give me lots of great advice about one of them when we were, roommates together, who's now, thank God, no longer a part of my life. Right. But, I tell people this, and I'm open about it because I want them to know that, yes, I'm a successful attorney and I've done all these things in my life, but it can happen to anybody. And if you're an empathic person and you want to be kind and you want to be generous and you think that you can help these people and you end up doing these things, or it's a people pleaser problem or whatever it is, but you end up, getting sucked into that vortex of toxicity.
That's right.
And, so how do you move on? How do you get over this person? How do you get them out of your thoughts and out of your life?
Yeah. Yep. It's a great question. So the bottom line is, when you individually from within feel calm and at peace and good about yourself, you're able to recognize that you don't need this person or any person, really. You don't need anyone to make you feel good enough, loved enough, important enough. So what's really crucial is that if you are somebody that needs to break away from a toxic relationship, that you're doing your own inner work, okay? Because here's the thing, many people don't recognize that they have this automatic mind that talks to them all day long from the moment they get up to the moment they go to bed. And they listen to this mind, okay? They identify with the thoughts in our minds. And by the way, we have 50,000 to 80,000 thoughts a day in our minds, okay? And most people don't understand that our minds just go. We don't tell our minds where to go. It just goes, right? So it's just like our bodies breathe for us. Our minds just go. And when you identify with all of the thoughts in your mind is whipping you all over the place, right? Why did he treat me that way? What's wrong with him? What's wrong with me that there's something wrong with him, right? All these places right, when you're in that toxic relationship, you feel badly about yourself. So the healing is really about taking your relationship with yourself, right, to actually a completely relocated mind, okay, where you're no longer listening to the automatic thoughts of your old mind that, truth be told, have been playing on a loop for forever, right? So what's interesting is that, when you think about the feelings that come up within this toxic relationship, you might notice that on some level you've had these feelings before. They might not have been as intense, okay? But they've shown up in other areas of your life and they've shown up in other times. So a toxic relationship is really a mirror, right? For you to look at, where are the places where I lost myself? Where are the places where right, like you said, Rebecca, right? I've been a people pleaser. I've been an overfunctioner. I knew somewhere in my gut that this behavior was unacceptable, but I made excuses for it. I justified it, right? I had this inner feeling that I ignored, right? So when we can tap,
I could definitely say that was true for me.
That's right.
From the beginning. Yeah.
And you know what? And I wonder if you hear this in the people that you work with, because that's what I hear. I mean, we're talking thousands of people. I knew from the beginning, and I just, I thought that he could change or she could be different or whatever it is, right? That inner knowing is inner wisdom. And when we're operating from that old automatic mind, we're not tapped into inner wisdom. We'd rather stick with, right, what we already have. We're very reluctant to let go, because in the letting go of the relationship, right, that's scary. Oh my God, we're alone, right? We don't have this person. What if I never get into a relationship again? What if I can't, live my life without my partner, right? So it's fear that keeps you stuck and attached to holding on to something that deep down is toxic, but you'd rather hold on to it than deal with all of the feelings of fear associated with letting it go. And so the healing for people is to be able to deal with that fear, but also know, right, that when you learn how to think in a way where you can feel good, you can design a different life moving forward, where you are no longer people pleasing and you're no longer accepting things that are unacceptable, and you are no longer ignoring that inner sense of wisdom and truth.
You're in this relationship with a narcissist. You've been married to this narcissist. You've been looking at it and figuring it out, and oh my God, you realize, I'm actually married to a narcissist and I don't want to be. What are you going to do about it? How are you going to get out? It's so hard to just start the process. So one of the things that I want to tell you is, when you're preparing to ask a narcissist for divorce, is to get your mindset in a place where you feel strong enough to be able to do that. And that might seem like a really strange place to start, but that is really where you want to start, is with your mindset. You want to believe that you can actually get free of this person. I've had many, many clients who have come into my office and who have said to me, I can't leave, or I don't know how to leave, or I don't even think I have the strength to do it. Or this other person is so powerful. One of the things that narcissists do is that they have their victims believing that they're so powerful and everybody loves them and they have the whole world under control. And so no matter what you do, you can't win. There's no way that you're going to be able to get out of this thing. That's what they want you to believe. That is so not true. I've helped people out of the worst situations, the deepest holes, the darkest places. So the first thing I want you to do is work on your mindset. Just understand that you can do this. And if you want to know more about having a winning mindset, check out my interviews, part 1 and part 2, with Mark Raffin, who is the negotiation ninja, and he talks all about how to have a winning mindset. Just know that 80% of a negotiation is won before you even walk into a room. And understanding that you can win is just 50% of that 80%. So just understand that you can win, and you can get out, and you can escape, and it will be okay, and you will have a new life, and you will be all right on the other side. So that's number 1, is to have a winning mindset. It doesn't even have to be winning at the beginning. Just understand that you can do it. So number 2, before you even ask that narcissist for a divorce, is have a plan in place. Make sure that you have figured out where you're going to live, how you're going to serve this person. Are you going to hire a lawyer? Are you not going to hire a lawyer? All these things are going to be in place before you ask that narcissist for a divorce, because when you go to ask the narcissist for divorce, you may trigger their narcissistic injury and their rage, and things might start happening. And before it goes spinning out of control, you want to be able to put all these pieces in place that will allow you to have control over the situation when you ask that narcissist for that divorce. And if you're so ready to divorce that narcissist, give me a let's roll in the comments. The next thing you need to remember when you are going to ask a narcissist for divorce is that you're going into now the discard phase of a narcissistic relationship. And if you want to know more about the discard phase, check out my video on the discard phase of a relationship. Because remember, you have your love bomb, you have your devalue, and then you have your discard. When you go into the discard phase of a narcissistic relationship, regardless of whether or not you are doing the discarding or that other person is doing the discarding, it triggers their rage. And so you need to be able to plan for how it's going to go when you go ahead and ask this person for divorce. So understand that and anticipate that their rage could come out, and plan for that accordingly. So where are you going to be? Is it going to be a place where you're alone? Are your kids going to be around? Are you going to be at someone else's house? Are you going to be sitting at Starbucks? I once had a client who decided to ask his spouse for divorce in their marriage counseling office. And I actually thought that was a good idea. But he wanted to try to control the process, and they had been going to marriage counseling. And so he decided to tell her that he was going to be asking for a divorce in marriage counseling. But it completely backfired on him, because he told her that she was going to be served later that day, and their marriage counseling was at noon or something. So he goes back to work, and she goes home, and he gets home at 6 o'clock that night, thinking that she's going to be home and that she will have been served. Well, guess what? She leaves a note saying, I went to this other place, which was like an hour away. So we go to serve her at that place that was like an hour away. Well, we come to find out later that she had gotten in her car with her dogs. She drove straight to another state where they had another home. She went and hired some celebrity divorce attorney, big time heavy hitter, and ended up filing in that other state first, and then serving him first. So we ended up having to litigate the case in another state before we could even get to the merits of the case in our state. So we basically had to get that other case dismissed, which we were able to do, but it cost him lots and lots of money to do it, before we could even get back to our state and start the regular divorce process. It really backfired on him. So one of the things that I would suggest to you when you're planning on how to ask this narcissist for a divorce is to anticipate what is it that you think that they're going to do when you ask them for a divorce. Sometimes the better thing to do is just to go ahead and serve them. Have everything planned, have everything ready to go. You've moved your stuff out, maybe when the person is at work, or maybe in the middle of the night. I had another client who, once her husband was sleeping, she packed up all the stuff and slipped out in the middle of the night. He woke up in the morning and she was gone. We were just able to serve him at 6 o'clock in the morning, and that's how he got told that she wanted a divorce. Sometimes the best way to ask a narcissist for divorce is not to ask them, just to let them know that you want a divorce because they've got served with divorce papers. And that way you don't have to deal with telling them, and you don't have to deal with being there when their rage is triggered and they might go crazy. Some people don't like to do it that way because they feel like, oh, that's not the nice way, or I want to give them a chance to respond, or I don't want to hurt their feelings or whatever. But if you're dealing with a true narcissist, understand that that narcissist doesn't have that same feeling for you. They don't have that same sense of empathy, and you have to do what you have to do in order to protect yourself. And if you've got minor children, then you need to protect them too. You should also check out my video on before leaving a narcissist. Watch this, because I go into a lot of these details and even a little bit more. But you can also just tell them, I'm leaving, and this is how it's going to go down, and I'm not coming back, and nothing you can say will make me come back. And just say it very calmly, and say it without emotion. And I would recommend that you say it where you're not completely alone, depending on the type of narcissist that you're dealing with. You don't want anything you say to be twisted in a certain way. So, my client's idea of doing it in marriage counseling wasn't necessarily a bad thing. But, if you are going to do that, then maybe the process server is waiting for them in the parking lot, like when they go get to their car, something like that, so that they don't have a chance to double cross the way my client's wife did to him. But, say it without emotion, say it resolutely, be ready. You've got your mindset ready. If they sense one little piece of waffling in you, they're going to use that to their advantage and try to hoover you and love bomb you right back into your life and try to gain control back over you again. Those are my suggestions on how to ask a narcissist for divorce.
Number one, you've got to have a clear strategy. It's better be crystal clear, and it better be strong, and it better be powerful. You better to be ready to go on the offensive and have your leverage ready. You better do your research, do your homework, have everything you need to incentivize that other side to want to come to a resolution with you. Even if you say, I don't want to fight, I want it to be amicable, great. But if you've got a narcissist on the other side, they don't feel the same way. All right? So if you want them to come to that nice, easy conclusion, then you're going to have to incentivize them to do that. And the only way you can do that is by getting leverage. I have a video on how to negotiate with a narcissist specifically. You're going to definitely want to check that out, and I will drop a link to that below. Okay, number two, you're going to want to pick a really strong lawyer, and you're going to want to pick a lawyer that knows what he or she is doing. Make sure that they know what type of person that they're going to be dealing with, so that they can help you develop that strategy that I talked about in step number one. And related to this step number two, by the way, is to make sure you pick a lawyer that you're really going to trust, and then trust that lawyer. Because what your narcissist, soon to be ex, is going to do is try to get you to distrust your lawyer. That person is going to say your lawyer's only out for whatever, or only money, or to break us up, or whatever it is. But if you are dealing with a narcissist, that person is probably a pathological liar. And so why would they start telling the truth now? So the only reason they want your lawyer out of the picture is because then they can drive that wedge in there and get control back over you again. So once you pick a lawyer that you really like and you can trust, listen to him or her, okay? Okay, number 3 thing that you can do is document, document, document. Everything in writing. You know, he or she is going to say to you, oh, let's just meet at Starbucks. Let's just have a conversation. We don't need all this stuff. You know, so that's the kind of thing they're going to do. And then every single thing you say will have been ended up being twisted. And you're going to be gaslighted, and they're going to be saying, oh, no, we had this conversation and you agreed to X, Y, Z, or they're going to send you an email afterwards saying, oh, and we agreed to X, Y, and Z, and you know you never had that conversation, right? So that's what they're going to do. Make sure everything's in writing as absolutely much as possible, because they're going to try to manipulate you anyway, but at least you can try to minimize it. And that's what we're talking about here. You're not going to be able to change the other person. The other person is who they are, but you can do things to try to protect yourself and be feeling like you're on the offensive rather than on the defensive the whole time. Okay, and number 4 thing that you can do is keep your cool. You're going to want to keep your emotions in check. It's one of my 6 steps of winning in any negotiation, and I'll go ahead and put a link to that video as well. But you're definitely going to want to keep your emotions in check, because that's what they want. They want you to lose your cool. They want to get under your skin. And as soon as you allow them to do that, now they're already winning again. Now it's working, whatever manipulation it is that they're trying to pull on you. So keep your cool, keep your emotions in check, and don't let them get the best of you.
Now, if you're divorcing a narcissist and you're getting ready to go mediate a case, or even if you're not divorcing a narcissist, but you are mediating a case with a narcissist, maybe it's a former business partner or something, all the same rules will apply here. And so the very first thing that you're going to want to think about is be way over prepared. This is one of the biggest mistakes that I see people make in mediations. And what happens is they think, well, we're just having a conversation. We're just sitting down. Let's just see what they have to say. I'll just tell them what I have to say. And, you know, we'll just take it from there and hopefully we'll get it resolved. Big mistake. You definitely need to have a very clear strategy. You need to have your leverage ready to go. You need to be anticipating what they're going to say. And you need to be focusing on you. Those are that's my acronym for SLAY, by the way: strategy, leverage, anticipate, and focus on you. And you want to slay that negotiation. And so be over prepared. Prepare as if you're going to trial. You need to have everything ready to go. Your research has been done. You know what your position is. You know what their position is. You're anticipating what their position is going to be. And you have your arguments ready to go. You have your valuations, you have your appraisals, you have the supporting documentation for all of the information. You have an asset and liability exhibit ready to go. You have your arguments ready to go. You have your first offer ready to go. And it better be a whole lot more than what you're going to be willing to accept, right? So you have all of that ready to go. And that means that you're over prepared. And that means that you'll be ready. Okay, so that's step number 1. Okay, so step number 2 is be ready with leverage. And a lot of people say to me, what does leverage mean? How do you get that? And what leverage really just is, you know, kind of like a squeeze that you can put on the other person to get them to be motivated and incentivized to want to come to the table and have a conversation with you. And it's different for every person. So it's kind of hard to say, oh, this is it. But what you do is you look at what is motivating this person the most. Is it money? Is it power? Is it controlling you? Is it that they want time with the kids? Is it that which usually when you're dealing with a narcissist, it's not time with the kids. They'll say it's time with the kids, but they don't actually really care about the kids because they don't care about anybody but themselves. So just be aware of that one. But it might be, you know, that they look bad. They don't want to look bad. It may be that they want to move on and be with another person. It may be that they want you back or something. And, you kind of use that to your advantage too. You know, some people don't like the idea of creating leverage because they say, I don't want to fight. And, you know, most everybody who comes into my office says, I don't want to fight. I just want what's fair. Well, you know, everybody has a different idea of what's fair. And that's what happens. And that's why people end up fighting. right? So, and especially when you're dealing with a narcissist, because they have these grandiose ideas of what's fair, and they bolster their contributions to things and minimize yours. So, figuring out what their leverage is going to be really, really important as well. So that's number 2. And number 3 is don't stay in the same room. A lot of times we start off in the same room, but I really highly suggest that you don't stay in the same room. Sometimes it's easier for the mediator to just give their opening spiel like one time, what the day is about, and all about the mediator. I've practiced law for X number of years, and I've been mediating for this many years, and here's how many mediations I've done. And it saves them from having to say it twice. But I don't recommend staying in the same room with someone who can push your buttons, who knows how to get under your skin, and they're really, really good at it. And even, as self-disciplined as you are, and going back to step number 1, the more you're prepared, the less emotional you'll be, so the easier the day will be for you. So definitely make sure that you're over-prepared. But staying in the same room will just probably cause you headache and heartache, and you probably won't settle your case if you do stay in the same room anyway. So we do what we call caucusing, which means that the mediator goes back and forth, and you're in one room, either by yourself if you don't have representation, or you have your lawyer there with you if you have representation. But then the mediator just goes back and forth. And what's great about that is the mediator can kind of work as a filter. They'll come back and present information to you in a very neutral way, without all of the drama and without the emotion involved and without the manipulation piece involved, and all that sort of thing. And especially if that narcissist has been a bully and controlling, you really don't want that, because they will probably trigger you. Okay. So step number 3 would be tip number 3 would be not to stay in the same room. Okay, so tip number 4 is to not bring other people with you unless you've cleared them ahead of time with the other side. You probably won't be allowed to keep that person there. The mediator has a duty to disclose who's in the other room, and if the other side objects to having that person there, then you're going to have to make that person leave. So, I would definitely not bring someone unless you've cleared it ahead of time. Unless it's somebody who's involved in the process. I mean, obviously, if it's a forensic accountant or a custody evaluator or somebody who's involved with the process, then they're going to be allowed to stay. But anybody else will be kicked out of the room. Which of these ideas have you liked the best so far? Just drop a link in the comment, or just drop a little comment below and say, oh, I like this one so far the best. But stay with me, because the best ideas are coming. Okay, number 5, I talked about this a little bit in number 1 when I talked about being over-prepared, but number 5 is having your first offer ready to go. And it should definitely be way, way more than what you're gonna be willing to settle for, because, narcissist is going to think that they got the best of you. So, decide ahead of time what you're going to be willing to part with, and then, put that into the offer. Also decide ahead of time what your choke point is going to be. I've had a client one time call it the vomit point, but that's okay. Basically, at what point are you going to stand up and say, I've had enough? And a lot of that is going to depend on what the law provides. So, if the law provides that you got permanent alimony after a certain number of years of marriage, and you definitely know a court's going to order that, and the other side says, I'm not paying you a penny of alimony, and that's never going to happen, and I'll wait for the judge to order me to pay you. Well, okay, then maybe don't settle that piece of the case. And you can settle parts of cases. Some lawyers don't like to do that. Some do. But you can just take the parts to the judge that you haven't settled. Okay, so, but once you have gotten a resolution, and let's say you've given away what you've already decided ahead of time that you were willing to part with anyway, act like that was like the worst thing in the world for you. Like you just cut off your right arm in order to give that person that thing, because If they think that you got the best of them, or it was okay, you know, you didn't care about giving that up anyway, then they're not going to settle, because, you know, they want to feel like they got the best of you. Unfortunately, you kind of have to check your ego at the door when you're dealing with a narcissist like this. Okay, and the last tip is something I've alluded to before, and if you're a regular viewer of my videos, you know that what I'm going to say, right? And that is to keep your emotions in check. It's so, so important, because as soon as you lose your cool, as soon as you are crying, screaming, yelling, screaming back, calling them names, getting down into the dirt with them, then they know that they have you. One of the things that drives a narcissist the most crazy is when you aren't moved by their antics and you don't respond. They can't stand it, because, you know, narcissists want attention. They want to know that they have control over you. So stay non-emotional. And of course, it's much easier to do if you're in separate rooms.
Now, let's talk about how to prepare yourself financially for a divorce. If you are getting ready to go through a divorce, it's different to prepare financially if you are what we call the moneyed spouse or the non-moneyed spouse. The moneyed spouse is usually the one who is making more money, and very oftentimes the moneyed spouse is the one who has more control over the finances. Sometimes it's not necessarily that way. Sometimes you see the person making the money, and then the other person who hasn't been making as much is the one who has been paying the bills and in control of the finances. But a lot of times what you see is the moneyed spouse also usually has control over the actual money. So if you are the non-moneyed spouse, or the person who doesn't have control over the finances, it's really even more important for you to prepare yourself financially for divorce. And if you are getting ready to divorce a narcissist or anybody, make sure you check out my video on before you divorce a narcissist. Watch this, because that will give you tons more information. If you are getting ready to divorce a narcissist or anybody, and you're in it to win it, give me a "in it to win it" in the comments. Regardless of who you are, whether you're the moneyed spouse or the non-moneyed spouse, the very first thing you're going to want to do is gather your financial documents. So when you go to file for divorce, and once the divorce is filed, regardless of where you are, you will have to disclose information about your finances. So generally, that means a couple of years of tax returns, several months of bank statements, credit card statements, you know, savings accounts and checking accounts for both personal and business. It also means credit card statements for both personal and business, and it usually means any kind of prenuptial agreements, deeds for real estate, retirement account statements, pay stubs, the way that you've been paid, you know, whether it's maybe it's a 1099, or maybe it's a W-2, or maybe it's a K-1, but you will need to be able to have access to all of that information, or actually copies of all of that information. Your lawyer will need that. And, you know, for how long will you need it for? I mean, at least several months worth of financial statements for banks and credit cards, probably at least a couple of years of income information for your tax returns, and then at least a couple of months of statements for current pay stubs, things of that nature. So that's number one, is gathering your financial information. Sometimes if you're the non-money spouse, it can be kind of hard to get access to that. Don't beat yourself up over it. If you can't get access to it, then it will have to be disclosed anyway once the case gets started, but it's a little bit easier for your lawyer if you've already got that information, because now that avoids having to send out requests to produce, and then if the other person doesn't produce the documents, then your lawyer now has to file some kind of motion to compel the information to be disclosed to you. So I would just say the more you can get your hands on, the better it is. I actually had a client one time who would just get little bits and pieces, and you know, she would just drop it off at my office, and she did that for like 2 years before we actually even started the divorce. But that's what she did. And so gathering your financial information is going to be really, really important. Number 2 is going to be understanding your lifestyle and tracking your expenses. So if there's going to be any kind of a claim with regard to alimony or support, or maybe even child support or something like that, lifestyle and monthly expenses may end up being an issue. So it's really good if you have a really good understanding of how much you've been spending monthly on anything, you know, including mortgage, taxes, insurance, electricity, utilities, cell phones, but also dining out, insurances, pet expenses, grooming, gifts for people, any kind of children's expenses, tuition, lunches, anything that you're spending for the children, extracurricular activities, things like that. So make sure you have a really good understanding, if you can, of what the lifestyle has been, because that will also help you as well. Sometimes people need to hire forensic accountants for lifestyle analysis, and if you've already done the work, it will save you lots and lots of money. Number 3 is having access to cash, because especially if you are the non-moneyed spouse, yes, your lawyer can potentially file something for you to get some sort of support for you on a temporary basis and going forward. And yes, maybe your spouse will continue to deposit their paycheck into the joint account or let you have access to credit cards and things like that. But they may not. They may cut off your access to that. And yes, your lawyer can file something that orders the court, where the judge will order the narcissist or whoever the other person is to continue to pay for those things for you, and can you continue to give you access to those things. But in the meantime, while they've cut you off, your lawyer has to file the motion, get the hearing time, get in front of the judge, get the judge to give a ruling, and all that time you're trying to live. And how are you going to? So if you can, ideally, it would be better if you have at least a few months worth of cash that you have access to, that you have sole control over, and also enough to hire a lawyer if possible. If you don't have a way to save it up for yourself, maybe you can call upon family members or friends to get a loan for you, so that until your lawyer can go and get that money back from the spouse, from a court hearing, that you take it out in loans. And obviously there's no guarantee that you can get it back, but that is something that you will want to talk to your attorney about. But in the meantime, if you can get access to having enough cash to get you going for a few months, and also hire an attorney, that would be the ideal situation. The last thing is just prepare yourself and your documents in making sure that your any trust documents or wills or anything like that state what you want them to say, because once you get going with the divorce, you may or may not be allowed to change beneficiaries or change what is in your trust documents or your wills or things like that, or beneficiaries on IRAs, because sometimes, depending on the jurisdiction that you're in, there may be a standing order issued that gets issued. It's an order of the court that gets issued as soon as the divorce is filed, which precludes people from making big changes. So, it will preclude you from also putting the house on the market or doing anything like that unless you agree to putting it on the market or making these big changes. So if there are changes that you want to make, you should probably talk to your lawyer, but those are the kinds of things that you're going to want to do prior to the divorce being filed. So I want to answer this question about how to hold the narcissist's feet to the fire and sanctions and what to do about that. So first of all, what is a sanction? A sanction is a way to punish that narcissist. It's something that only can be issued by a judge, no one else.
And sanctions can be in the form of all different kinds of things. It can be in the form of striking their requests, like striking their pleadings. It can be it can be fees. It can be fines. It could even be, jail time, depending on what it is. But it's basically the court gets mad. The court says, hey, you're not doing what you're supposed to do. We don't like that. So I, judge, am going to sanction you. I'm going to punish you by making you do these things. And I'm going to tell you that I really don't like what you did. So I'm going to sanction you. So that's what sanctions are. And sometimes they're statutory and sometimes the judge just imposes them. Statutory means that, if you look up in a particular statute, if there are sanctions for, let's say, not complying with a parenting plan, some states actually have sanctions listed there, things that the judge can choose from to punish somebody if they haven't done what they're supposed to do with regard to that parenting plan. And sometimes they're not statutory. Sometimes the judge just says, you know what? I really don't like what you did. And I don't like your attitude. I don't like the fact that you have thumbed your nose at my court order. And so therefore, I'm going to impose bad things to happen to you. So it can be statutory. It doesn't necessarily have to be. But one thing you do need to know and remember is that the only person that has any power over anybody else is the judge, no one else. So, you can't, your lawyer only has so much power. The other person's lawyer, the narc's lawyer, only has so much power. And, a lot of times people say to me, how come his or her lawyer doesn't tell them that their behavior is bad? Well, you don't know what conversations are going on between that narcissist and that narcissist lawyer, number one. And number two, sometimes narcissists pick lawyers that are just happy to do whatever they tell them to do. And a lot of times lawyers don't want to get fired. So they'll just go along with whatever the narcissist wants them to do. I often say that narcissists and their lawyers are kind of like owners with their dogs. They kind of usually find one that kind of looks like them or is at least willing to toe the line and say what they want them to say. So a lot of times, once you get a court order into place, let's say it's for something pretty benign, like that they're supposed to provide documents by a certain date or time, that, that they were supposed to provide financial documents, bank statements, credit card statements, something like that. And there's a court order in place that says you're supposed to provide them by a certain date. Let's say it's, September 30th or something like that. And September 30th comes and goes, and then they still haven't provided the documents. And the first words out of your mouth are going to be, how are they getting away with this? How is this happening? Well, no one's standing in people's living rooms. There's no like police out there that stand there and go, oh, it's September 30th. This has gone by. You didn't do it. So how does it get enforced? The only way it gets enforced is you, if you're representing yourself, or your lawyer has to go back to the court, has to go back to that only person that has power, which is the judge. So they have to file something. And so, I don't necessarily know what it's called in your particular state or country or jurisdiction, but it's going to be some kind of pleading or motion or something that they can file to go back to the court and say, Your Honor, this person did not do what they were ordered to do according to your court order. So now please do something about it. And now the court can say, okay, I can hold you in contempt or something like that. And once they find that that person is in contempt of court, meaning I just did whatever the hell I wanted and I thumbed my nose at your court order. I had the ability to comply with your court order. I just willingly decided I don't really care and I'm not going to do it. That's what the judge has to find that person felt. So, a lot of times there's a conversation around whether the person had the ability to comply with the court order. People will say, I didn't have the ability to pay. And so, the court has to find, does that person have the ability to purge their contempt? Do they have the ability to, was it willful? So there's always conversation around that. But once you get all the way down to that point, then you can get into some sanctions and say, hey, you should have complied with this court order. You didn't even, you had the ability, nothing was stopping you from complying with this court order. And so therefore, I'm going to go ahead now and sanction you. And so, and sanctions, a lot of times in civil court, which is what family court is, it's in the form of money, fines, things like that. Attorney's fees is a really easy way to sanction or fine somebody. And sometimes if it's like that they were supposed to pay something and they didn't, they can sanction them by adding on interest, something like that. When it comes to support obligations like child support, courts usually don't mess around with that. Child support sanctions can be pretty darn harsh. That's where they will actually attach pay stubs, take driver's licenses, maybe put a flag on your passport so you can't leave, sometimes even incarceration. So, especially with child support, that's where courts really get pretty aggressive with their sanctions, because courts, they don't want children to become wards of the state. They want people to do what they're supposed to do with regard to children. So just make sure that your lawyer, most lawyers don't understand narcissism. So, a lot of times when early on, if the narcissist didn't, provide the documents they were supposed to, sometimes they're required to send a letter, try to work it out with the other lawyer before they can do anything. So you have to respect that sometimes is required. But once your lawyer has satisfied anything with regard to that, you got to stay on your lawyer about staying on them, because if you just give a little bit to a narcissist, they think they're winning. They think they're getting away with it. And one of the things I want to say to all of you is that when you are a victim of narcissistic abuse, which a lot of us who've been narcissist victims are empathic people, kind people, good people, generous people, open-hearted people, it's not natural or doesn't feel necessarily comfortable going on the offensive and just being as aggressive as you can possibly be in the court system. But that's what you have to do when it comes to dealing with a narcissist. And I talk a lot about that in my SLAY program and in my free webinar. So if you haven't checked out my free webinar, you should definitely do that, because I talk more about all of this in that. Because you can't let the narcissist get away with anything. And that's why I created the SLAY program, because I wanted you all to understand that 99.9% of lawyers don't understand narcissism. So you can have a fantastic lawyer, but they still may not. I mean, you can spend $100,000 and not get anywhere. I hear those stories all the time. And people think, why aren't I getting anywhere? How come I'm not? Why am I spending all this money and we're still spinning our wheels? Why am I spending all this money and we're still like, they haven't done what they're supposed to do? They're still getting away with it. They're still ignoring court orders. You just have to be on their butt all the time. As soon as they didn't do something that they were supposed to do, you have to be right on them. Because as I said at the beginning of this video, narcissists get supply from jerking you around in the court system. So, you have to make it so that they don't really enjoy it anymore, that they're not getting supply from it anymore. The minute that they've ignored a court order and your lawyer has just let it pass by, and you or you, if you're representing yourself, hasn't filed something in the court system to say, hey, motion for contempt, motion to enforce, motion to compel, set it for hearing right away. Just let the judge know right away that this person is thumbing their nose at the court system, and judges don't like that. They want people to be respecting their court orders. And so you have to kind of stay right on them about that. Let's talk about whether or not you should use the word narcissist in court. The short answer is probably not. There could be times that you could use the word narcissist in court, but for the most part, what you want to do is use the information that you have to prove that the person is not necessarily a good person. And here's why. When you're dealing with judges, you are dealing with a judge who probably has hundreds of cases on their docket, literally hundreds. I know in most counties and most jurisdictions, there are hundreds of cases of divorce cases, new cases filed a day. Every single day. And just think about how many family law judges are on the bench in your particular jurisdiction. It might be 1, it might be 20, but even if it's 30 and there are hundreds or thousands of cases filed a day, those cases are being assigned to those judges on a daily basis. And so those judges are having to deal with thousands of people getting a divorce, thousands. And those cases don't even count the cases where people come back to enforce issues where there might have been a problem before. Somebody's not paying something they're supposed to pay. Somebody's not obeying the terms of the agreement or going along with the terms of the agreement. And it doesn't also include any of those modification actions. So people who are going back to try to change the parenting plan or try to change the child support or try to change the amount of alimony or anything like that. So enforcement and modifications are not even included in that number that I'm telling you of hundreds or thousands of new divorce cases. So the judges literally are overwhelmed, backed up. They have way too much on their plate, way too many cases on their docket. And judges, by the way, are evaluated. They're evaluated by the judicial system, and they're also evaluated by the voters who voted them in if they were voted in the first place and not appointed by a governor or something like that. But they're still going to be evaluated. They're going to be evaluated on how quickly they get cases off of their docket and also how many times they are appealed. So I give you all of that background because I want you to understand that for those of you who have children, you understand that when your kids, if you have more than one kid and they're fighting with each other and they come at you and they go, he did this to me, she did that to me, she started it, he started it. What's your first reaction going to be? Your first reaction is going to be, both of you just stop it. Both of you just get along. Just get along. And so most judges, they just don't want to have to deal with it. They hear finger pointing, they see finger pointing, they hear complaints about spouses on a daily basis all the time, and they're like, over it.
They just want the case off their docket. And remember, when you do get to go to court, you're going to have a very short window of time to present your case, to look like the good one, to be the one that the judge potentially likes better. Remember, judges do apply the law, but they are human beings underneath those black robes. They have biases. They decide they like someone. They decide they believe someone, whatever it is. You get a very short window of time to present your case. And a lot of times people will say to me, I have 50 witnesses that'll show that this person is a bad person. Okay, well, but when you think about that in terms of a realistic presentation to the court, you have to remember that in order to present a witness to the court, you have to have time on that judge's docket. And hours and hours and hours of time on the judge's docket translates to hours and hours and hours of money and fees that you're spending for your attorney. And if you put 50 witnesses on your witness list, then the other side is going to want to depose every single one of those witnesses. So when it comes to, going in front of a judge and saying, that person's a narcissist, the better way to do it, the judge is just going to go, okay, they're all narcissists. Everybody's a narcissist. That's basically what they're going to think. So what you need to do is put it in light of something that the judge is actually going to care about, such as custody. If, the judge has the obligation to come up with what's in the best interest of the children, what's going to be the best parenting plan, what's going to be the best custody arrangement, who should have decision-making authority about the children's issues, or something like that. And so when they're looking at those things, they're going to go, okay, has this person put the children's needs before their own? Has the person encouraged a relationship between the children and the other parent? Has this person been respectful to the other parent? I'm sure in wherever you live, wherever you are in the world, there is some law around how the judge is going to figure out what's going to be best for the children. So it's going to be better for you to take a look at those laws, whatever they are, and present evidence in light of those laws that shows that this person is not necessarily a good parent. And you can do that without just saying that person's a narcissist. Now, if you want to say that person's a narcissist and you really want that word to be presented to the judge, then it's going to be better served to do it in the context of either a psychological evaluation or a custody evaluation that's done by a psychological professional or mental health professional who then says, I did psychological testing on these parents and here are the results that I found. And it's going to be in the context of a full-on report that's probably going to be 30 or 40 pages, and it's going to have tons and tons of information and supporting documentation as to how that mental health professional came up with that diagnosis of that person. But even so, remember that narcissism is not illegal, and it is not grounds for taking children away from parents. I mean, I know it feels like it should because they're heinous beasts, but the better way for you to attack using the word narcissist or showing narcissistic traits in court is showing why the judge should care about this person's bad traits. So whether it's in the context of, property division, or maybe it's in the context of showing that they have bad moral character, or because they lie all the time. Lying is always going to be something that's relevant, or something within the context of the custody case. That's where you're going to want to use that information that you have about how that person is a narcissist.
Now, if you're getting ready to go to court with a narcissist, whether it's divorce court or otherwise, you're going to want to be fully prepared, and you're definitely not going to want to walk in without having the best possible strategies and tactics at your fingertips, because this is going to be no cakewalk. The narcissist is going to make it as difficult for you as possible. So stay tuned and listen to the end so that you can get all the tips and you'll be all ready to go. All right, number one is have everything that's possible to be in writing, because narcissists by their nature are pathological liars. So they are going to lie about things that you said, you didn't say, conversations that took place or didn't take place, what they said or didn't say, whatever it is, it's going to be twisted, it's going to be manipulated. So you want to make sure that you can keep everything in writing to the extent that that's possible. So, and ideally it would be like in an email or something like that, where you actually have the timestamp on it, you have the date stamp on it, you have the email, who it came from, the email address of who it came from, who it went to, that sort of thing. Text messages are admissible in court nowadays, but it's just a little bit more difficult to authenticate them when it comes to evidence in court. So it is better if you can do it via email if possible. The other problem with text messages is that they tend to go away after a certain period of time. And especially if you don't save them, it's really difficult to go back and find them. The phone companies don't even really keep them either. So you're definitely going to want to make sure that you use email if possible. If you're co-parenting, having a co-parenting app such as Talking Parents or Fair or Our Family Wizard, something like that is always a good idea too. I mean, the bottom line is that they're going to try to get you away from this writing. They don't want to be in writing because they know that it will box them in, and narcissists don't want to be boxed in. So they're going to do whatever they can to get you to meet with them, to go against what you said before, things like that. They're just, you know, let's just meet. We don't need the writing. We don't need all these other people around us. You know, let's just meet at Starbucks or whatever. And the reason why they're doing that is to get you into a place where they can manipulate you again. So by keeping everything in writing as much as possible, you can minimize that problem. Now, what the flip side of this, by the way, is for you to remember that every single writing is a potential trial exhibit. So if you don't want to see it again, then don't put it in writing. The way I just say it to people is, you know, just imagine the judge is leaning over your shoulder and watching you write that text or that email. And before you hit send, say, you know, Judge, Your Honor, is this something that you would want to see? And if it's not, then you don't want to send it. Okay, the second thing that you're going to want to do is use video for depositions. And the reason why you're going to want to do this, and yes, it's a little bit more expensive. You have to pay for the court reporter. Now you have to pay for the videographer. But it goes back again to boxing that narcissist in. If you box them in enough, then they will act like the spoiled temper tantrum child, and their true colors will show up, and you'll be able to use that against them down the road. So, but you know, just trying to control their behavior using video will definitely help, because if you don't use video, what they tend to do is do things that don't show up on the record, meaning the court reporter will take down everything that's actually said in the deposition. When you look at the deposition transcript, it'll just say question, blah, 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 answer, blah, blah, blah. There's nothing around it. There's no description given around it. So if that narcissist is giving you dirty looks, making faces, all the things that they do, and they do, then nothing is taken down. Now, for me as a lawyer, there have been many times where I've had to say, let the record reflect that so-and-so is making faces at so-and-so. But, you know, how many times can the lawyer do that over and over again without just constantly interrupting the deposition? So by videoing it, you actually see what, how they're responding and how they're acting. Plus it makes them behave a little bit better because they're a little less likely to be a complete jackass if there's a video shining in their face. If this is all sounding really good to you so far, put a thumbs up in the comments. Okay, number 3 it's focus on your own case. So this is one of the biggest mistakes that I see lawyers make. I see lots and lots of people make, because it's just natural to want to focus on what's the other side doing, and all of their flaws and all of their mistakes, and how is he or she getting away with this, and look at how badly they're behaving, and isn't the judge going to see that? And the answer is maybe and probably, and yeah, you will want to bring out all of the other bad behavior of the other side. But, you know, just like in football, if all you have is a good defense and you have no offense whatsoever, then you never score any points, right? So you want to make sure that your case is as strong as possible. Focus on your case. Make sure that the facts and the supporting documentation and everything is done to create your case, and make sure it's super strong. And then for the other side, you create that leverage to help motivate them into wanting to come to the table to potentially have a settlement conversation with you. Or, you know, you have all the points that make them look bad. Yes, you know, anything that shoots their credibility. You know, when people say, oh, how are they getting away with this? They're lying all the time. How are they getting away with this? So the thing I want you to remember, here's a good reality check for you, and that is, who would stop them from getting away with something? The only person who has any power over another human being in the court system is the judge, not the lawyers, not you, not family members. No one has the power to order someone to do anything other than the judge. And how do you get in front of the judge? Through motions, through hearings, through trials, things like that. Things have to be filed in the court system, and then you have to have a hearing, bring it to the judge's attention, and only at that point can you potentially rein in their behavior. But while you're waiting for that time to get in front of the judge, you're just documenting, you're keeping track, keeping track, keeping track. So that's how you're building your case. If you're dealing with a child custody situation, for example, and the person just never shows up to get the kids, or they show up late, or they constantly change the time, you just document it, document it, document it. And then when it comes time to present that to the court, you have a nice log of exactly what happened and when, what time did they show up, what time did they leave, you know, all of that. So eventually it will work in your favor. But just remember that you want to keep track of your own case and make sure that that is bolstered as much as possible, and then highlight the weaknesses of the other person as well. Okay, number 4 is what I started to allude to in number 3, which is document, document, document. And I cannot stress this enough. Keep really careful notes. Have an app open on your phone. Have a journal, a log, whatever you need to do so that wherever you are, real time, you can be logging what's happening. And I have won entire cases on these types of logs. Let me tell you, they do work. It is critically important. So make sure that you're documenting, because what you're doing is you're slowly closing in on your narcissist from every angle. It's you know, this is war. This is the art of war. And so you're building these tactics, and you're closing in on them from various different angles. And it doesn't look like you're doing much until you've got them fully surrounded. And that's when you realize, hey, I have them. And only then is when they're going to want to start to have a conversation with you about potentially settling the case, and not having to go to court, because you know that the main thing about a narcissist is that they don't want to look bad. I have a lot more on this in my videos on how to negotiate with a narcissist and how to negotiate with a narcissist X, and I will drop links below to those videos. You'll definitely want to check those out. Okay, number 5, definitely do very thorough research. Have everything ready to go. Do you need appraisals? Do you need valuations? Do you need a forensic accountant? Do we need to figure out what the person's true income is by looking at their bank records? Do we need to figure out a lifestyle analysis by looking at credit card statements and bank statements and things like that? Everything needs to be ready to go, all I's dotted, all T's crossed. Don't leave any stone unturned. Don't leave anything to winging it, because whatever your weaknesses are, wherever there's that weakness in your case, that's where they're going to find you, and that's where they're going to jam their foot in and open that door and make it into a big, huge thing. So also, in being prepared, you're going to want to make sure that you do all the research for the other side. What are they going to argue? What points do they have against me? What leverage do they have against me? And then be ready to answer that. I anticipated this argument, and here's my response. Because if you're only prepared for your side, then you are only half ready to go. So make sure that you are ready for both sides, as if you're preparing for both sides. And one word about leverage, by the way, is make sure that once you've got that leverage, you use it at the most opportune time. Do not give it away too early. Do not show it to them before you get to court, because you want to use it when you need it. All right, so the last one, number 6, is to keep your emotions in check. And this is going to be one of the hardest things to do, because narcissists know how to push your buttons and they know how to manipulate you. So they're going to make faces, they're going to make little snarky comments, they're going to say things under their breath. And, you know, so I would totally avoid making eye contact with them in the courtroom. It's not going to serve you. Just look at the judge. When you're testifying, just look at the judge. Make sure that you've practiced your testimony. I, as an attorney, go over my direct testimony with my clients. If your attorney doesn't do that as a matter of course, ask your attorney to do that with you, or ask them for the questions and have somebody else practice it with you. You want to just be able to at least control the parts that you can control, which is your direct testimony. You should basically know what those questions are going to be. Your attorney will be asking you those questions, and be ready with what you're going to say so that you're not stumped and you're not feeling nervous and anxious. You know exactly, okay, this is that question, here's how I planned to respond to it. I mean, of course, you're going to answer truthfully. You just want to be prepared on how you're going to word your answers, how you're going to say it, what things you want to make sure to get in, what things you want to make sure to say, things like that. So, so that's your direct testimony. Now, as for your cross-examination, you should also see if your lawyer, I know I usually do this as a matter of course. I tell my clients what to expect for cross-examination too. I even sometimes get another lawyer in my office to do a mock cross-examination with the person and sort of beat them up a little bit, just so that they're ready. You know, the kinds of questions that I would ask under cross-examination, something like that. So the more you can be prepared, the less emotional you will be, the less anxious you will be.